I'm Betsy Broun. I'm the Margaret and Terry Stent Director of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, officially closed. Like all of the Smithsonian museums. I'm able to be with you because I'm actually not a federal employee, so there are some benefits for that, I guess. Anyway, I wanted to start by profoundly thanking our hosts today in the National Museum of Women in the Arts, Billie Holiday, Susan Sterling. When they saw this train wreck developing, they knew about our program and they called our organizer, Amelia Garlitz, and said, how can we help? And so we did not have to send horrible notices to everyone saying, I'm sorry, you have a non-refundable ticket to Washington. Instead, we could say, we're on, it's happening, it's in a slightly smaller space, but we want you here. And I cannot thank them often enough. This is true collegiality in the sort of universe of Washington museums, and they are profoundly wonderful friends and colleagues, and we are grateful. I also want to thank Amelia Garlitz. She is our academic programs coordinator, and she is a woman who knows how to roll with a punch. She not only has gotten well organized and had her plans all firmly in hand and everything beautifully orchestrated, which positioned her a little better when we had to make a change, but she has done this before and will do it again. And I wanted to flag that this is the fourth in a series of 5 biannual conferences that is dedicated to looking at American art in a wider global context. You know, when I started school, many decades ago, the field of American art was all about one question. What is American about American art? How are we distinctive? What is special about us? How do we do things that are different from anyone else? And I have lived long enough to see that entire philosophy turned inside out. And now the question is, how are Americans and American art connected to everyone else around the globe? How are those dynamic interchanges helping define and shape who we are as a people and as a country? And probably no one has made more of a difference in that sort of inversion of focus than the Terra Foundation, headquartered in Chicago. Going way back, they began to understand that American art was in danger of sort of tunneling down and navel-gazing and defining itself ever more narrowly as a subset of the world. And they began to encourage a focus on the broader connections, the interchanges, the cultural hybridity that we find in all cultures. And they've been consistent in supporting those kinds of programs. We are very proud that not only do they support fellowships, including some international programs at our museum, but they have supported this series of 5 symposiums. The past 3 looked at American art in the context of Asia, in the context of Europe, and in the context of Latin American and Latin cultures. And now, today, it is about Africa and the African diaspora. In a way, it's about not just the cradle of humanity, but because of the enormous diaspora around the globe, it is also the cradle of culture. And we are particularly honored to be able to do that. We are proud to have the largest African American collection in the world, but also we know it is a broader topic than just African American art. It affects so many artists of all ethnic backgrounds and cultures. The interchange has been so rich and profound as we are learning more, and we'll learn more in the next 2 days. So hats off to the Terra Foundation, and big thanks to Ruth Fine, who is on the Terra Foundation board and representing them today. She also is a superb colleague here in Washington, the longtime Special Projects and Modern Art chair at the National Gallery of Art. She has been intimately involved with these issues. She was the curator for the Romari Bearden show there and has deep experience with the questions we'll be discussing in the next 2 days. So with that, I want to now introduce our second welcomer, because we are partnering with this symposium with our great colleagues at the Smithsonian in the Museum of African Art. And their director, Johnnetta Cole, is with us today. She came to the Smithsonian in 2009, but when she arrived, she was already an extremely prestigious, distinguished, recognized scholar and leader around the world. I'm always kind of awed because Johnnetta has 55 honorary degrees. Thank goodness she didn't have to study for all of those. But she has been honored and offered more awards than almost anyone I know. Before the Smithsonian, she served as the president of both Spelman College and Bennett College for Women. So she has deep, deep experience in both culture and gender issues, how they play out across this country. She has been a consistent voice for diversity and equality, not only across the United States, but all around the globe. And it is with great pleasure that I introduce my colleague, Johnnetta.
In the part of the African diaspora where I grew up, please excuse me, not only would I say good morning, I would say it's a great getting up morning. Now that is, first of all, because we're simply here, but importantly because we are here despite the challenges. I want to follow my colleague and my sister friend, Betsy Broun, by offering some very sincere thanks. First to Betsy herself for reaching out and including the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art in this stunning, this sterling, this really, really meaningful project. And while the lioness, as opposed to lion, share of the work has been done by American art, we're more than happy to take as much credit as we possibly can. Now, how in the world do we thank Amelia Gurlitz? I mean, what do you say to someone who not only has a vision, but then the persistence to carry out that vision, despite these circumstances? And all I can say to both you, Amelia, and to the rest of us who are suffering through this government shutdown is, like one hears all over the continent. It's a wonderful proverb. No matter how dark the night, dawn will come. I just hope dawn hurries and gets here. I also want to express publicly thanks to two of my colleagues, Christine Mullen Kramer, who is Deputy Director and Chief Curator at the National Museum of African Art, and I want to thank Janet Stanley, who is our librarian, because those two colleagues did at least assist Amelia in looking at all of those fantastic project descriptions and your ideas for presentations. Now, I want to join Betsy in thanking the Terra Foundation. If you do the kind of work that Betsy and I do, tell you the truth, you got to lean heavily on folk who share your vision and your mission. So I'm looking directly at you, Ruth Fine, as I say, for all of us collectively, not from the top, not from the middle, but from the bottom of our hearts, we thank the Terra Foundation. And then I want to add, again, I find myself just repeating what Betsy has said, but you know what? When you're talking about good things, repetition is good for the soul. And I do want to thank the director of this particular museum, Susan Fisher Sterling, who just opened her house to us. I did see Susan as I walked in, and she asked that I say to each of you, not only a welcome, but please enjoy all of the works that are on exhibit, and don't you dare leave, this is my word, don't you dare leave without seeing the Faith Ringgold exhibition. And of course, the greatest thanks go to you, the participants in this symposium. You've come from near and far to have a very, very serious conversation. Now, clearly the topic of this symposium is very important to those of us in the National Museum of African Art. And that is because our work is centered in using the visual arts to help all of us rethink how we think about Africa, about her diaspora, and therefore, really, about the world. Over the course of the years of the National Museum of African Art, we have been privileged to present some exhibitions which very definitively speak to much of what will be discussed here over the course of these 2 days. Before my time, I just would mention two very compelling exhibitions: Transatlantic Dialogues, organized by Michael Harris, and Astonishment and Power, that juxtaposed an exhibition of Congo power figures with the extraordinarily compelling works of art by Washington-based artist and a member of my board, Renee Stout. Well, since I've been at the museum, we've also done two exhibitions which clearly seek to present the connectedness of Africa and her diaspora. One, Mami Wata, which was organized by the Fowler Museum at UCLA. And as many of you know, that exhibition looked at the influence of this African water spirit in various parts of the African continent, as well as in Haiti, Brazil, and the United States. And the second, Grassroots, again, organized by a sister museum, in this case, the Museum for African Art in New York. That particular exhibition looked at transatlantic basketry traditions that linked West Africa, particularly Sierra Leone, with parts of the southern United States, and particularly traditions in South Carolina. And then finally, a few months before I arrived, Chief Curator, Deputy Director Christine Mullen-Kramer running into my office in a fit, saying that there was a particular work of art that was up for auction in Paris. And when I looked at simply a flat image of it on paper, I knew that yes, we had to have that work of art. And just as we imagined, it has become our destination work. Just as folk will get off of the plane or off the bus or whatever and say in Paris, "Where is she? Where is the Mona Lisa?" we find that our visitors will come into the museum and say, "Where is he? Where is Toussaint Louverture lifting up an elderly enslaved woman?" And it's that particular iconic work of art that captures so amazingly, we think, what our museum is about. The artist is a contemporary African artist, Ousmane Sow, from Senegal. The theme of his work is, of course, Toussaint Louverture, the great liberator of Haiti. But the largest message is about something that connects human beings around the world, namely a cry for freedom. Now, we are looking forward to 2014, it will be our 50th anniversary, and that gives me an opportunity, just saying that, to remind you that we at the Smithsonian have 3 museums with a very focused mission that revolves around Africa and the diaspora. The National Museum of African Art, the Anacostia Community Museum, and how extraordinarily excited we all are when we welcome onto the mall in 2015 the National Museum of African American History and Culture. But I have to say publicly that while we are 3 with that focus, Sam, the Smithsonian Museum of American Art, has an extraordinary history and her story of looking at, helping us to value, to be inspired by works of the African diaspora. Well, looking ahead to 2014, I simply want to share with you that this museum that began on Capitol Hill when a retired Foreign Service officer by the name of Warren Robins began to collect and to put the works of art in a townhouse on Capitol Hill, in which, by the way, Frederick Douglass once lived. When that, shall I call it, bodacious process began, Warren Robins collected and presented not only African art, but American art, and encouraged a dialogue between those 2 bodies of art. And so in many ways, our participation in this symposium is simply to carry on the legacy of our founder. In 2014, as we celebrate 50 years, we will do an exhibition that we haven't really announced it before now, Betsy, an exhibition that will indeed present a conversation and juxtapositions between masterworks from a particular private African American art collection and works from our permanent collection. So let me bring closure now by simply saying what is obviously at the very core of what we will do over the next 2 days. And that is, we will be engaging in dialogue. We'll be talking about collaboration. We'll be lifting up the importance of exchange. We'll be valuing conversations. And I thought I would leave you with 2 wonderful African proverbs. The first is Burundian, and it says quite simply, life is all about exchange. And more broadly heard across the continent, a proverb that says, dialogue protects life. Thank you all for being here.